My brothers and sisters in Christ, if you've ever played with a small child, or perhaps if not with a small child, a pet, a dog or a cat, you'll know that earlier, more primitive stages of psychological development, there's not a sense of permanence or continuity. What this means is what the eyes don't see doesn't register as existing. There's not a conception of what exists beyond what I can see. And so, this is what lies at the roots, for example, of the game peekaboo. If you cover your eyes, if you cover your face, then you disappear to someone that has a less advanced psychological development. And so, there's no sense that you're still there, but just behind whatever you're blocking with. But when you move it, now suddenly you're there again. And in the same way, if you've seen a small child or an animal that's playing hide, sometimes you can get the comical sense where they're hiding behind something and yet you can see like half their body sticking out. But they think they're hidden just because their eyes are covered. Because they can't see you, they assume that you can't see them. We are like these small children or these animals in our approach to God sometimes. Very, very primitive in our sense, our perception of His presence, His being with us. And so we hear at the end of the first reading today from the prophet Isaiah, the sense that Zion says, "Oh God, you've forgotten me, you've abandoned me." To which God says, can a mother abandon her child? Of course God doesn't forget us, and yet we seem to think that He's not there. But why is this? Is it because of something God has done, or is it something because what we have done? In fact, there's a key passage earlier in that reading where He says, "To the prisoners I speak, come out." For me, this image of, telling the prisoners to come out speaks towards one thing backwards and one thing forwards. If we look forwards, it speaks to a similar theme we'll hear this upcoming Sunday, the gospel passage of the raising of Lazarus. When Jesus, with the tomb rolled back, Jesus commands Lazarus, come out. And the dead man comes forth at the word of command from Jesus. But if we look all the way back to the book of Genesis, at the story of the fall, the first thing that happens when Adam and Eve eat of the forbidden fruit is they realize that they're naked. Their eyes are opened in a way that it wasn't before. This is the consequence of the fall. They realize that they're naked, their perception of one another, of God, everything has changed. There's suddenly danger, there's relationship jeopardized, there's barriers, and so they hide themselves. It's the very first thing they do in reaction. God had walked with them in the garden. God didn't change in this way, but now suddenly Adam and Eve, who had a very innocent relationship with God, suddenly hide from God. And God comes calling for them to come out of their hiding. Their very hiding lets Him know that something has changed according to the narrative. And so, for us, our fallen state, even though we may be redeemed from original sin through our baptism, we still suffer the consequences, that darkening of the intellect, our tendency to sin, the way in which our flesh and our soul compete against each other. And so, all too often, in our sinfulness, we hide from God. It may be from our shame, it may just be from our navel gazing in the sense that we're obsessed with ourselves. And so as I stare at myself, suddenly there's a million reasons why I take my eyes off of God. But for me, suddenly, because I don't see God, God isn't there anymore. Just like the child or the animal, I can't perceive that God couldn't be any closer. In fact, it's as if God is standing right before me, and just because I do this, God disappeared. God hasn't gone anywhere, but my perception has shifted because of my own sinfulness, my own distraction, my own self-absorption. But to this, God does not abandon us. He reminds us that a mother can't abandon her child. God's love cannot fail us. He cannot leave us for dead or for missing, but He comes for us. He speaks to the prisoners, Come out. Come out from your place of hiding. Come out from your shame. Come out from your places of sin and self-absorption. Come to me. Come to me that you may live. And so, my brothers and sisters, in this season of Lent, through our penance and through our prayer, may we shed aside the things that distract us, the things that blind us to the presence of God. And may we renew our trust in him. May we truly gaze upon him, who is all good and whose love knows no limits. May God bless you all.